Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today I want to talk to you about queer imposter syndrome. I hear fairly frequently from people who feel like they are not queer enough to take on a queer identity. A lot of times it comes from people who have come out later in life or have understood themselves differently than they did when they were younger. So maybe they came out as a teenager and now their identity has changed. Just so we're all on the same page, let me define imposter syndrome for you. Imposter syndrome is basically the persistent inability to believe in legitimacy of your own identity or abilities. So basically, you feel like a fraud in whatever area you have that imposter syndrome in. Some people feel it in their jobs. In fact, that's usually where imposter syndrome is talked about the most, is in a professional setting. You feel like you didn't earn your job, or you feel like even though you're good at some things, you're just kind of fooling everybody into thinking you're good at those things, and actually you're an imposter. The wildest part about this is the more you find success in that area, the more imposter-like you feel. That self-doubt comes from lots of different places for people, but in general, within the queer community, the reason that there's imposter syndrome in our identities as queer is due to heteronormativity and internalized homophobia. Sometimes people will say, I don't feel gay enough, or I don't feel queer enough to enter into queer spaces. Especially people who do come out after their teen years, like what some people term later in life. If you've seen stories of people coming out as teens or as even tweens, and the things that they've had to endure because of being public about who they are, if you've had years of passing as cis-het, you're likely to carry some guilt into that. And the larger narrative is that homophobia has to impact you in order to earn your queerness, which is not true. Talk about that in a couple of moments. But that idea that you're not queer enough because you haven't endured the hardship that you've seen other queer people endure will stop you from feeling like you belong in queer spaces, or even have the right to own a queer identity in general. People say, I don't get clocked as gay. I know you've all heard this somewhere. I'm on about 1 million different Reddits, a bunch of Facebook groups where people who are coming out of their straight identity and self-actualizing for the first time are wondering how to look more queer. Have you ever seen a TikTok about this? This idea is all over the place. The idea that you have to dress or behave or conduct yourself in a certain way so that queer people and straight people alike will know that you are who you are. That's so problematic though. In reality, all that does is enhance and strengthen the stereotypes that are out there about queer people. If you are a woman and you identify as a lesbian, the idea that you need to look or dress a certain way in order for people to know that you're a lesbian is so problematic, both to you and your identity and understanding who you are, and to the community as a whole, because we are then just playing into those stereotypes the rest of the world has for us. And so often that idea comes from external factors. So you come out to your parents, or you come out to a sibling, or you come out to anybody in general who didn't know, and their response is,
but you don't look gay.
What does that even mean? What does gay look like to you? Gay people are just as varied in appearance as straight people are. So what does that mean for that person who's saying that to you? And what does it mean to you when you hear that? Because in reality, if you're just starting to tell people who you are, and that's the response you get, that's going to get filed away in this whole, maybe I'm not enough to be in the queer community. Maybe I'm not enough to be gay. Maybe I'm not enough to be trans. Maybe I'm not enough to be pan. You are. By knowing who you are, you get to claim who you are. It's easier said than done. I get that. But those ideas of,
oh, you're gay now,
or,
oh, you're trans now,
or any of those things that people say, it marks the time that they knew who you are as when you became who you are. That is hugely self-serving on their part and does not need to jeopardize your security and your safety on your part. When people use those words, it's because they're seeing the situation in a very self-centered kind of way. But this idea that someone's identity begins when we know it, it's so painful for the community as a whole, because it means that one person's experience with someone dictates that person's identity. And that's just not fair. Having to come to terms with yourself because of someone else. Someone else outs you and you didn't get the chance to really understand who you are and what that meant before you told people. Or your understanding of yourself based on who you are dating or who you are attracted to or who you're not attracted to. The cishet world has so sexualized the queer community that their understanding of queer people is connected to sexuality, and that's it. So basically, if someone's in a heterosexual relationship but not having sex with each other, somehow that doesn't make them not heterosexual. But if someone's in a queer relationship but they're not having sex with each other, the understanding is, oh, then you're not really gay, you're not really whatever, because you're not doing the thing that makes you that way. Why is sex the only thing that makes someone part of the LGBTQIA plus community? Why would that ever be something that someone assumes? Because way back when, it was easier to scare people away from these scary, scary queer people if they made them out to be predators. If they made them out to be highly, highly sexualized. So they have to have sex with whatever they can. And because they can't always get someone of the opposite sex, they're going to go for whoever. It is an absolutely insane idea. But if you really drill down into most of the homophobic things that are said in society today, that's what it comes back to. It's this understanding that being queer is also being a pervert. It's not the same thing, but heteronormativity tells us it is. Society tells us it is. So when you start to understand who you are, you also know that you're not damaged and you're not a pervert and you're not overly sexualized, but those ideas are inside of your head. Those ideas are inside of your understanding of what it means to identify in this community. And because society has done such a great job of convincing us of this, it becomes that much harder to self-actualize in a way that makes that identity feel valid. And that invalidity of that identity is literally imposter syndrome. People are also asked, how do you know you're gay if you've never blank? So if you are a woman who says, I'm a lesbian, people feel like it's okay to ask,
how do you know you're a lesbian if you've never kissed a woman?
How do you know what you want in a relationship if you've never been in a relationship?
And never mind, we're going to put a pin in the fact that that could legitimately be said to somebody who is also heterosexual, and they would have no idea what you're asking about. Like, actually what they're saying there is, how do you know you're a lesbian if you've never had? Well, how do you know you're straight if you've never had? You would never ask someone that. Never would anyone in their right mind who is trying to respect other people, would they ever ask someone that? And yet straight people think that it's totally okay. You do not have to try what you don't want in order to fit who you are. You also don't have to have never tried what you know you don't want in order for your identity to be legitimate, which is another thing that people really do feel. If you've had a relationship with someone of the opposite sex, but you do not identify as pan or bi, there are times that imposter syndrome will come up for them because they feel like they're being an imposter by calling themselves gay or a lesbian or queer because they have also acted straight when they thought straight was where they were. It goes back to the I'm not queer enough to be queer. I'm not gay enough to be gay. It's all so interconnected, these ideas, and it works together against the person feeling these things. So not only are you dealing with internalized homophobia, and not only are you dealing with heteronormativity and heterosexism, but you're also dealing with being able to legitimize yourself in a world that does not see you as legitimate. Another part of this is remembering that because we are growing up in a heteronormative society, even if you have the world's most accepting and understanding family who never once assumed your sexuality until you told them, you're still living in a world that does. Okay? And because of that, there are circumstances that you may feel that you need to hide. You might not even know why. You just might hear somebody in the way they say something, and you sort of note that in the back of your head, like, oh, I can't tell this person because they're not safe. They'll say that about me too. It happens all the time. You've got little kids on the playground and somebody has on the same shirt that they had on yesterday. Other kids are making fun of them. You have some kids over here who are looking at it and then begin to get in their head about, I hope I never, ever, ever wear the same shirt I wore yesterday because these kids are going to make fun of me. It happens all of the time. We assign meaning to ourselves based on what other people go through. And because of that, when you live in a society that is judging people who are queer just for being who they are, you are going to feel like being you is not a legitimate way to be, which makes you feel like an imposter. How do we work on this? What do we do to get ourselves out of imposter syndrome and start legitimizing ourselves? The first thing you need to do is identify the thoughts and the emotions connected. Some people think in words, some people think in pictures, some people think somewhere in between. Identify what your thoughts and emotions are when these things come up for you. When you feel, I'm not queer enough, what's going on around you? What environment are you in? Are you feeling off about something else in your life and you're projecting it? Figure that out. Start to really notice and tune into those things for yourself. Let yourself feel those feelings when they come up. Those feelings are not the problem. Allowing those feelings and those thoughts to dictate what you do is where it can become problematic. Allow yourself to feel your feelings. Explore them and see if there's some legitimacy. Are you not feeling safe in that environment and therefore you don't want to come out or you don't want to tell people who you are? Even if you're in a queer environment, if you explore that a little bit and you find legitimacy to it, keep your information to yourself until you want to give it to somebody. It's no one's business but your own until you want other people to know. If you find there's not legitimacy in these thoughts or these feelings, treat yourself gently. I would gently challenge those thoughts and see if you can rewrite them. So instead of,
I'm afraid to tell people who I am because I'm bi, so they might not find me valid in a woman-loving woman environment.
what's the thought process here? The thought process is
They are going to dictate my value.
and
They are going to reject me.
it's a fear of rejection. A fear of rejection is a very valid fear. We all fear rejection on some level. So then you think about it. Is the possibility of rejection by some people that I don't know and will probably never interact with again if they do reject me, is fearing that worth the potential for missing out? Do I have valid reason to believe that they will reject me? Explore those thoughts gently, not in a way that guilts you and not in a way that makes you feel like crap about yourself. Explore those thoughts and gently challenge them. If you find that they are not as valid as you once thought they were, it's okay to go ahead with what you want to do and allow those thoughts just kind of be there. Just let them be there. They don't have to dictate things for you. And if you find out they're legitimate, then maybe that space is not a space you enter right now. And the last thing that we do to sort of start to get over this is intentionally interact with queer people in queer spaces. Go to groups in your community. Go to a pride walk. Go somewhere that is low risk, high reward for connecting with people. Take one person so that you feel safe and confident and can make new friends. Maybe start online because sometimes online is lower stakes. Intentionally interact with the queer community. That will help to validate your queerness because you're around people who have gone through similar things, no matter how you identify. A lot of the emotions of being rejected, being left out, being marginalized by society, those emotions are similar, and that's a common ground. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to learn more about imposter syndrome, go ahead and check out this video right here, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.